Point Park Soccer goes 2-0 in their games last week. The cross-country team runs in the Lock Haven Open Invitational. The esports team goes off against Shenandoah University Monday night at 7. And the volleyball team keeps their winning streak alive with 2 more wins. The Pitt Panthers start their 8th game ACC conference stretch. The Pirates aim to finish the season with less than 100 losses. The Steelers get a long break to prepare for the New York Jets, and Penguins hockey is back. Week 3 of the NFL season was wild with some close, exciting games and also not so exciting games. And MLB records are being broken as we speak, and teams start to clinch their divisions as the regular season comes to a close. It's time to come on down to the Pioneer Sideline. Hello, and welcome back to Pioneer Sideline. I'm your host, Natalia Hillen. The Point Park men and women's soccer teams both had successful wins against Ohio Christian University this past Saturday at Highmark Stadium. The men's team won 9-1 with some great gameplay throughout the game. The top scorers from the game were Moritz Sarford and Philip Harder, both scoring 2 goals each. By the first 10 minutes, Point Park had 2 goals, leading to 2-0. Moritz Sarford scored the first goal, which was assisted by Peter Holt. Holt then made his way to the net and scored his own goal 2 minutes later. Another big highlight of the game was Jaime Rodriguez and Lucas Souza both getting a goal and an assist, making the score 7-0. During the second half, Lima passed the ball to Harder to get the first goal. The 9th goal for the Pioneers was made in the 83rd minute by Juan Baritica from a pass from Juan Enrique Fernandez. The Pioneers will be back at Highmark Stadium on Wednesday, September 28th at 4 p.m. to play against Washington Adventist. Good luck, boys. Moving on to the women's soccer team. The Pioneers beat Ohio Christian University with a final score of 4-1. In the 8th minute of the first half, Mariah Rojas scored the first goal of the game, which was assisted by Holly Pasco. Shortly after the first goal, Pasco made one in the net herself, getting the Pioneers to take a 2-0 lead. And then in the 19th minute, Tamaya Wolford scored the third goal, assisted by Pasco. Ohio Christian didn't end up making their way to the net with a goal in the 25th minute, but the Pioneers did not let it get to them. Shortly after, they kept the 3-goal lead from Chanel Britton's tally at 8 minutes and 56 seconds on the clock. She had a free kick that was kicked in by Tatum Lucero 40 yards away from the net, with the final score of 4-1. The women's soccer team will be off the field until October 6th. They will then be playing home games at Highmark Stadium against Midway and IU East. Good luck, Pioneers. Switching over to the Point Park men and women's cross-country team. They had their second meet of the year competing in the Lock Haven Invitational this past Saturday. The Pioneers ran against Division II teams from around the region and held up very well. Starting with the men's team, they placed 20th out of 34 teams. 4 out of 5 Point Park's runners set personal records and heavily improved from the first meet. In the 8K course, Yannick Windelbin ran a personal record of 27:03. Elijah James ran a time of 27:09, and John Dyer with a 27:30. Senior Trevin Carter ran a 27:32 and cut off a minute of the last time he ran it. And freshman Joshua Gosselin ran a 27:33. Moving on to the women's team, they had many runners improve their times from the season opener meet in the 6K. 5 out of the 6 top runners ran personal bests. Placing 20th out of 285 runners was Alyssa Campbell with a personal best of 22:12. Other personal bests were run by Jana Schmid with a 23:14, freshman Carlene Deby with a 23:18, and Ali Placio with a 23:33. The Pioneers will be competing in the Carnegie Mellon Invitational on Saturday, October 8th at Shenley Park, right here in Pittsburgh. Make sure to come out and support the men and women's teams. Good luck, Pioneers. The Point Park Esports Rocket League team played the University of Missouri on Monday, September 19th, and unfortunately took a loss with a score of 3-0. In Game 1 of the match, Missouri made 2 goals, and the Pioneers ended up getting a last-minute goal, making the score of round 2 2-1. In Game 2, Missouri was up 3 goals and with 2 minutes left, Point Park got 1 goal, making the score 3-1. In Game 3 of the match, both teams had to face-off goals to make it 1-1 within the first 5 seconds of the game. Unfortunately, the Pioneers were not able to hold it down, and the Tigers made 2 more goals, making the score 3-1. With the series finishing up 3-0. The Rocket League's next matchup was this past Monday, September 26th, against Shenandoah University. Make sure to stay tuned to the live stream Monday nights at 7 p.m. After the break, we get an inside scoop on how the volleyball team did last week and how the men's and women's golf teams are doing in the RSC Golf Preview.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more.
All this and more.
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. We now send things over to Hannah Bazet to talk about how the volleyball team did last week and how the RSC Golf Preview is going. Hannah?
Thanks, Nat. The women's volleyball team has gone on a 3-game winning streak as the season continues, and they are now 9-3 for their season. The first game was on Tuesday, September 20th against Carlow University. The game was back and forth throughout the first 2 sets, and the team was trailing in the third until 5 big kills from the Pioneers brought them to victory. The Pioneers won their game 3-0. Moving on to Friday, Point Park played WVU Tech, where they again came up big. The Pioneers dominated the first set, ending with a score of 25-15, and managed to fight off the Golden Bears to win the second set at 25-21. Finally, the team rallied together and fought hard to win the final set 27-25. The game had a total of 40 digs in the 3 sets by 11 different players and 16 block assists by 7 players. To wrap up their winning weekend, the Pioneers played Alice Lloyd College at home. Point Park had control over the entire game, not leaving any room for the Eagles to come back. The first set ended 25-14, the second was 25-10, and the victory was sealed in the third with a score of 25-13. The Pioneers play again tonight against Slippery Rock University at home. We are looking forward to the game and hope our girls team can keep their winning streak alive. Moving on to golf, the women's team will not play again until October 3rd at the RSC Fall Preview, but the men's team competed on Monday, September 19th at the Westminster Invitational, where they got 10th out of the 14 teams that competed. The top 6 teams at the Invitational shot a .321 or better, and the Pioneers ended the day with a .350. Grove City's B team had a .345 to take 8th, and Pitt Bradford was just 1 shot ahead of the Pioneers to take 9th place. Juniors Tyler Hillard and Anthony Santilli both shot an 86 to tie for 39th place out of the 91 players that competed. The average team score for the day was a .332, and Westminster shot a .307 to win as the host team. The Pioneers play again at the RSC Fall Preview at Belterra Golf Course in Florence, Indiana. The first day of the competition was yesterday, Monday, September 26th, and the team finished up the day with a team score of .336 and is currently ranked 9 out of the 11 teams competing. The second and final day of the tournament is today. Sideline's very own Jacob Kubik is amongst the players down in Indiana. We are wishing him well, as well as all the other guys, the best of luck in the tournament. That's all I have. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Hannah. Coming up, Pitt football starts their long stretch of conference games. The Pirates aim to try and finish out their season strong, and Steelers Fan 7 Sideline Spotlight is back when we return. Welcome back. We now send things over to Mike Hodgetts to update us on all things sports going on locally. Mike?
Thanks, Nat. Tailback Israel Abanikanda rushed for 4 touchdowns, and quarterback Keaton Slovis was solid in his return from injury as number 24 Pittsburgh beats Rhode Island 45-24 on Saturday. The Panthers, who are 3-1, have been leaning heavily on the ground this season, which have been paying its dividends. The Panthers rushed for 272 yards and scored at least 30 points for the 9th time in 11 games, and Slovis had plenty of help on the ground from Abanikanda, who had 19 carries for 177 yards. The 4 touchdowns tied for second most in program history, and the Rams playing their first ever game against a ranked FBS opponent trailed by 10 points at halftime before Pitt pulled away after the break. Coach Pat Narduzzi earned his 56th career coaching victory at Pitt, tying him for 3rd all-time with John Mickelson, who coached the Panthers from 1955 to 65. Narduzzi trails only Jock Sutherland and Pop Warner for most wins by a Pitt head coach. Abanikanda continues to stay hot as he rushed for 100 or more yards for the 3rd straight time this season, and he's the first Pitt player with 3 straight 100-yard rushing games since 2017. Abanikanda entered the game as the ACC's lead-in rusher and has 75 carries for 464 yards in the past 3 weeks. The Panthers picked up a comfortable victory against an FCS squad before ACC play starts in full effect next week and should stay ranked when Pitt hosts Georgia Tech next Saturday. Now, on to Pirate news. The Pittsburgh Pirates gave a glimpse of their future with a starting lineup that featured 7 players aged 25 years or younger and 6 rookies in their final Sunday home game of the season on their Fan Appreciation Day. The Chicago Cubs spoiled the day by rolling to an 8-3 win Sunday afternoon and taking the 4-game series. The Pirates committed 4 errors, and the bullpen surrendered 7 runs to spoil another solid start by Luis Ortiz. Ortiz continues to make a case to earn a spot in the starting rotation. The rookie right-hander allowed 1 run on 1 hit and 2 walks with 7 strikeouts in 4 2/3 innings. Yet, Adrian Sampson, who started for the Cubs, allowed only 1 run on 4 hits, which came on a Brian Reynolds solo homer. Ortiz was impressive in his 3rd start as he struck out 5 consecutive batters, missing an immaculate inning by 1 pitch. O'Neal Cruz continues to look at fielding improvement as he committed his 14th and 15th errors in 73 games. Reynolds scored the lone run off starter Sampson for his 26th home run. Derek Shelton, however, was impressed with how the Pirates rookies reacted in the 9th inning, trailing by 7 runs, and were able to cut it to 5 and end the game with the bases loaded. As the season comes closer to the end, and with the Pirates approaching 100 losses, we will see what steps management will take into assessing their problems and needs into the offseason. Now, on to Penguin news. The opening of the Pittsburgh Penguins preseason kicked off with split squad matches against the Columbus Blue Jackets, and while the Penguins' big stars did not participate in either game, a handful of players showed flashes of what might be ahead of them in 2022-23. Heading into the 1 o'clock game, the Penguins had a distinct advantage on paper by icing a much more talented and NHL-ready lineup. First forward line Jason Zucker is looking to bounce back in a huge way this year, and he showed it by his goal in Game 1. With a lot of eyes going to be on Zucker this season, he got off on the right foot with a very early entry for Goal of the Year. However, the Blue Jackets bounced back and trounced the Penguins 5-1 in Game 2. Heading into the game, the Penguins went with a different look and went deeper into their roster with players who were fighting for roster spots against a majority of starters for the Blue Jackets. The NHL preseason is underway, and soon enough, NHL lineups will begin to form as the Penguins look to showcase their future and current talent this year. With all that in mind, we now send things to John Mayer for the Steelers Fans 7 Sideline Spotlight. John?
Thanks, Mike. The Pittsburgh Steelers fell to the Cleveland Browns this past Thursday night by a score of 29-17. The Steelers offense showed some slight improvement in this contest, carrying a lead in the halftime behind rushing touchdowns from Najee Harris and Mitch Trubisky, but the offense remained in neutral for much of the second half, as the team only notched a Chris Boswell field goal, while Browns Pro Bowl back Nick Chubb took over the game, putting up 113 total on the ground along with a touchdown. It wasn't all bad in the loss for the Steelers, though, as rookie wide receiver George Pickens made one of the greatest catches of all time, which absolutely broke the internet. An insane one-handed catch while his body was horizontal to the ground. Many have said Pickens' grab was reminiscent of the grab former Giants star receiver Odell Beckham made back in 2014, but some have gone on to say Pickens' grab was even better, including former All-Pro Jets corner Darrelle Revis, who said on Twitter that Pickens' grab was the best catch ever. Revis' former squad, the New York Jets, come to Pittsburgh this Sunday as the Steelers look to rebound from back-to-back losses. Ahead of Sunday's game, Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin announced a change on the depth chart as Montravius Adams has been promoted to the team's starting nose tackle ahead of veteran Tyson Alualu. Tomlin also announced that star safety Minkah Fitzpatrick has been placed in the concussion protocol, and an update will be given on his status later in the week. The team has brought back a familiar face as longtime Steelers punter Jordan Berry has been signed back to the team, while current starting punter Presley Harvin is dealing with an injury. The Steelers will likely be facing Jets quarterback Zach Wilson in his 2022 season debut instead of former nemesis Joe Flacco, as Wilson is in line to return from his ankle injury this Sunday at Acrisure Stadium. That's all I have in this week's Steelers Fan 7 Spotlight. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Mike and John. Now let's hear from Joey Bova with a quick recap on Week 3 of the NFL season and the MLB getting ready for playoffs just around the corner. Joey?
Thanks, Nat. Week 3 of the NFL was a wild one, to say the least. I'll start with the first big game of the day. The 3-0 Buffalo Bills faced off with the 3-0 Miami Dolphins. While both of these teams are powerhouses in the AFC, the Bills dominated this entire game. And when I say that, I mean it. The Bills had possession of the ball for a total of 40 minutes and 44 seconds with about 90 offensive snaps compared to the Dolphins' 39 snaps and 19 minutes and 20 seconds of possession. The Dolphins managed to beat the Bills 21-19, but my favorite story of the game was the Dolphins' butt punt. The Dolphins held the Bills to their 1-yard line, then went 3 and out. Punter Thomas Morstead punted his own lineman's butt and sorted out of their end zone. The Dolphins remain undefeated and are at the top of the AFC East over the Bills at 2-1. The next game I have was the Eagles-Commanders game. With some of the offseason moves the Eagles made, like strengthening their defense and adding A.J. Brown to Jalen Hurts' offense, it's no surprise the Eagles are still undefeated. While the Eagles took care of the Commanders, I didn't expect the Eagles' defense to tally 9 sacks in Carson Wentz's first game against his former team. The cherry on top of the win for the Eagles was a performance by the offense, with Jalen Hurts throwing for 349 yards and 3 touchdowns from Devontae Smith with 169 receiving yards, a touchdown, and mossing his defender in back-to-back plays, the first being a deep ball and the next being his touchdown for the day. Something interesting to note is the Eagles currently have the 7th overall pick from a trade with the Saints. Like I mentioned earlier, the Eagles are one of the few remaining undefeated teams. The final game of the week is the Chiefs-Colts game. The 0-1-1 Colts welcome Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs to Indy Sunday afternoon, and wow, what a game. Never would I have picked the Colts to win a game, especially against the powerhouse Chiefs. Both Mahomes and Matt Ryan passed for over 200 yards, but what lacked on the offense for the Chiefs was their run game. The Chiefs only totaled for 58 yards, with starting running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire rushing for 0 total yards with 7 carries and 39 passing yards. The Colts managed to beat the Chiefs 20-17, and I start to think, is Jonathan Taylor getting his worth in Indianapolis with 4 different quarterbacks in the last 4 years? The most boring game to watch of the day had to be the primetime game with the 49ers and the Broncos with a punt fest and Jimmy Garoppolo bringing out his inner Dan Orlovsky and stepping out of the end zone right before throwing a potential costly pick 6. The undefeated Giants and Dallas Cowboys faced off in a Monday Night Football primetime game, and punting seemed to be a common theme in this week's primetime games. The Giants and Cowboys combined for 3 field goals in the first half. The Giants only scored 1 touchdown in the game with the Saquon Barkley rushing touchdown. The Cowboys' offense took over the rest of the game with Zeke getting a 1-yard rushing touchdown and CeeDee Lamb bringing in a nice one-handed catch in the corner of the end zone. The Cowboys and the Giants' undefeated run as both teams are now 2-1. Now on to the MLB. Since our last recording, Albert Pujols has joined the 700 home run club, hitting 2 home runs against his former team with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Pujols joins Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, and Babe Ruth as the only players to reach the milestone. In other home run news, Aaron Judge looks to hit record-breaking home run number 61 and 62 to take the lead in the AL home run record. The Cleveland Guardians clinched the NL Central, and the Mariners look to break their 20-year playoff drought with 5 teams in their rearview mirror being within just 4 games. In the National League, the Mets and Braves face off in a 3-game series starting on Friday to decide who controls the NL East, with both teams being within just 5 games of 100 total wins, as the Dodgers and Cardinals lead their respective divisions with a nice gap between the teams below them. That's all I have. Back to you, Nat.
Thanks, Joey. After the break, we come back with our second case of the week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to Newsnight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen raiding.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more
All this and more
All this and more coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
coming up on Newsnight.
Welcome back. Today we're going to be switching gears from last week's case about quarterback issues and focus on what struggles the offense are having and who we think is to blame. Like John mentioned earlier, the Steelers lost to the Browns in Cleveland last Thursday and play the New York Jets this coming Sunday, with Zach Wilson making his season debut. Today I'm joined with John, Joey, and Matt to discuss what they think is going to happen for Sunday and what needs changed. So the big question is, what is the biggest problem with the offense right now? Some people are saying it's the quarterback, and some people are saying it's the coordinator.
It's the offensive coordinator. All the players in the locker room have voiced frustration and public doubt with the play calling, including Chase Claypool, who has said, "We have playmakers on offense, but we're still struggling to find an identity." With all these playmakers, Najee, Claypool, Johnson, an improved offensive line. Why is the Steelers' offense not succeeding? It's Matt Canada. A lot of the same offensive issues that plagued the Steelers in 2021 are rearing their ugly head again in 2022, whether it's the heavy use of screens, predictability. Chase Claypool with the jet sweep every single game, I feel like. It's just predictable. And even Ben said, for those that are saying it's the quarterback, like Mitch and Ben have pretty much looked the same. If Canada's calling a wide receiver screen, Mitch has to throw the wide receiver screen. So he's getting a lot of blame for not seeing receivers downfield, but if these are the plays that are called, he has to follow through. These players are employees, and the coaches are telling them what to do. So I really don't believe it's on the quarterback. I believe a lot of weapons are being misutilized, and I believe it's all on Matt Canada.
Matt Canada is definitely a problem in Pittsburgh right now. But for me, I think when you look back at what Trubisky's done since 2018, for me, he's played like a career backup, a below-average quarterback for a while. I think against the Jets, Zach Wilson making his debut, that would be a great time for Kenny Pickett to make his debut. I agree. Canada, he had Deontay Johnson running the same route almost all game versus Cleveland. It looks bad on the play calling as well. But Trubisky has not looked great for a while, for a couple years. It's not just in Pittsburgh as well. So I think this would be a great time to just say Trubisky's done, let Pickett play, 2 quarterbacks having a debut. I think that's the right game to do it.
I mean, I agree with both John and Matt. I think play calling has definitely been an issue. I think Mitch has been a little concerned on the different reads that he could possibly make or just what player he's going to have to hit. I think another thing that's been an issue, which isn't on the offensive side, is the defense. Without T.J. Watt, that's a big tone setter for the entire team. I mean, T.J. Watt is usually doubled 9 times out of 10 on the play, and that doesn't give options, or that gives options for Alex Highsmith or Cam Hayward. But without TJ, no one's getting doubled, and everyone's just being single covered. One thing we didn't mention was Najee. I don't think Najee's an issue. I think one of the issues that Najee's having is he's not breaking through the pocket as much as I would like to see him to, like we saw in last year in Alabama. He's only getting like 3 yards, 4 yards a carry through a little pocket. I don't want to say that's an issue, but I feel like maybe we should try and break the pocket more, stop running up the middle. And I mean, like you guys said, the jet sweep is, predictable at this point. 3 games we've been doing it at least. I mean, we've been doing it a lot. And I agree with both of you guys. I definitely think it's Mitch on top of Matt Canada.
So what is one thing the Steelers can do for Sunday to fix something?
The Steelers' offense, I believe, needs to run more no huddle and tempo. The players have voiced the success that it's had, and the Steelers' offense to defend Mitch, it's at its best when the quarterback is calling his own plays. It was the same thing we saw last year with Ben, who's one of the masters of all time at the no huddle offense, clutch situation. So I believe they need more tempo, more no huddle offense, because that's when we see these receivers shine. And Mitch is able to make the throws. Like this past Thursday, Mitch made the throw to Johnson right there, and then on another third down, Canada rolled him out towards Myles Garrett on a critical 3rd down and 5. What are you doing? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. The Steelers have the talent. It's being wasted by an incompetent offensive coordinator who couldn't even last at the college level.
They need to change something for Sunday. So, in my personal opinion, I don't think Pickett should go in yet. I don't think it's Trubisky. I do think it's the coordinator, and that is something that we're going to have to see on Sunday. Well, that is all that we have time for this week. We hope you are able to join us next week at the same Pioneer time, the same Pioneer channel, and the same Pioneer Sideline.